So I don't know if you've had a look or are aware. It's on the website on the page for this class. So we are running a course on meditation, on the meditation of the loving kindness, the metta bhavana. And so this week we are going to be exploring the 5 stages and the gap. So yes, the gap being referred to here is traditionally the gap between feeling and craving. So in the wheel of life, you have this outer circle called the Nidana chain, which was the Buddha explaining how conditioned co-arising, the conditioned co-arising of our own being comes about. And he said that there was a particular place where you could step out of the reactive cycle of the mind and step onto a creative cycle of the mind between feeling and craving. And one could consider that dwelling in that gap, so a feeling arises, we have sensory contact arises, independence upon contact, feeling arises, so we have a response to what's ever going on in our experience, whether that's the body or something external, of like it, don't like it, or neutral. On independence upon feeling, the Buddha said, craving arises. So we have a desire generally for the pleasant and an aversion towards the unpleasant. That leads on to grasping, which leads on to becoming and birth and old age, sickness and death. And the whole of the wheel of life is impulsed by this reactive cycle of the mind. So the Buddha said, well, you can step out of that cycle of the mind. And one of the ways to do it is by just staying with the bare experience of something without allowing it to go into craving. So last week we were talking about the plague of thoughts, or prapancha, as it's traditionally called. Literally means proliferation. And that's just that tendency of the mind to go proliferating on whatever arises in it. So, you have an ache in your foot. You could just experience that ache in the foot, or the mind hooks onto it and starts going, what on earth is this? How did this happen? Oh, I did something stupid. I'm always doing stupid things. Why did I do that? Blah, blah, blah. And the mind goes off on a whole set of responses. And this is a proliferation. And the Buddha was said to be nishprapancha. So nish just means sort of not or without. So he had no prapancha. His mind didn't do that. Yeah. So, and by not responding to feeling, the mind is brought to peace. And this is, what meditation is about, what meditation is designed to do, as it were. And we could call, part of that approach is summed up by the phrase bare awareness. So staying with just the feeling that arises, and feeling here doesn't mean, the sort of our emotional complexes, etc. It's more sort of the bare feeling sense of liking, disliking, etc. Or even just the bare sense, bare sensory experience. There's a sort of bare awareness approach, which he outlines in various places in the original scriptures. One particular one, which we probably mentioned before in this class, is the Bahir Sutta. So the discourse to Bahir, who was a sort of wandering meditation practitioner. And it also appears in the Satipatthana Sutta. So the Satipatthana Sutta is a large discourse where the Buddha gives instruction to the monks about how to practice mindfulness. And part of the approach in that is what's called bare awareness. So, we're completely familiar with this by now, that something arises in our experience and we're just trying to be aware of it, noticing it and not reacting to it. And of course, this bare awareness can be done into relationship to any object that arises. Anything arises in the mind, everything that arises in awareness through the senses, including the mind sense. And if we stay in that bare awareness in relation to everything that's arising in experience, whilst we're doing that, if we really are in that kind of bare awareness, we are at that moment beyond craving and aversion. So that's good to know. So today, because we're with metta, we're going to be exploring this in relationship to the metta bhavana. So normally, when we teach the metta bhavana, we teach it in as a kind of what you could call a generative practice. So the word bhavana means something like making to become. So we're making to become metta, and we use the imagination, reflections, we contact the body, and we're trying to generate this feeling of metta. But sometimes I think this can trip us up. It certainly tripped me up in my meditation journey at one point, because I had this sense that I had to somehow, generate this metta, even if I wasn't feeling it. And if I somehow didn't generate this metta, I was some way sort of failing in the meditation practice. Of course, that's not, in a way, there was a wrong view in there about how to practice the metta bhavana. But I think during this series that Badra and I got planned, I think we're going to be approaching it, the metta bhavana, in different ways that are going to show us that that's not, that generative practice way isn't the only way into the metta bhavana. So yes, that's what we'll do today. We'll do the metta bhavana with that approach of staying in the gap in relationship to the 5 stages. So we'll still be calling people to mind, at least in the friend and the neutral and the enemy stages, so-called enemy stages. So yeah, of course, we still want to call the person to mind, and the better that we can do that, generally, the more connection we make to the practice. We're going to start the practice by contacting our present moment embodied experience. And then we're going to be looking at our own experience as it is in the moment, from the point of view of any sense of lack. So lack in this context is, well, in a way, it corresponds to craving, or craving. When craving's mentioned in that spiral, the condition of conditionality, in the circle of conditionality, craving also means aversion. So it's any push and pull towards our experience. So sometimes, I've done this. I sit down to meditate, and before starting, just sensing if there's anything that doesn't want to be here. right now, meditating. And quite often, you know, there's some part of me that isn't happy just to be here in this present moment. So I try to contact that. It's something that wants to go out of this present moment, out of this present experience, and to sort of reach for something else. Can be reach into memory for something. It can reach into fantasy for something. It can be reach into a stream of thoughts about some future something or other. But it's all responses that are taking me out of this present moment. So, you know, the Buddha said that the path starts with dukkha. And to some extent, not acknowledging and recognizing our dukkha can become a hindrance to us getting on to the path. Well, in fact, it can. And this is the same in meditation. So if we're able to contact that, you know, acknowledge that, hold that in awareness, then that won't be in the back, as it were, pushing us out of our attempts to be here now with the meditation practice. So we'll start the practice of that, and I'll say a few things to help us get into that. And then we'll go through the friend stage, the neutral stage, but in that same way, just holding the responses. So holding responses of fear of intimacy, maybe with a friend, fear of the unknown with the neutral person, and the fear of aversion responses, or any aversion responses that come in relationship to the so-called enemy or the person we're having difficulty with, and just holding our responses within a loving awareness. Okay, so that's hopefully that's plenty of explanation. So if we want to set ourselves up for meditation, so just letting our attention turn inwards. Checking our posture, making any corrections we need to make, get a stable and yet upright and alert posture. Turning our attention away from the mind sense, away from thinking and mental proliferation, and we can do this by turning our attention towards the physical body. So the direct awareness of the sensate tactile body. We can do this in any way that we particularly find suits us, or we can start with the sensations around the head and face. The more we're able to come into the direct sensate, tactile experience of the body, the less we'll be pulled back to that mental proliferation. Coming down through the body, noticing the sensations in the neck and throat, the upper chest, the diaphragm, and the bottom of the rib cage, picking up on the direct sensations of the body. Down to the lower abdomen, and coming back to the heart center. So looking for the sensations around the heart, the middle of the upper chest, below the sternum, so the heart in Buddhism is also considered to be part of the mind. It's an aware center, if we like. Traditionally, the seat of emotion. Of our affective life. although it's not necessarily the case. Often, a sense of metta of human connection, of loving kindness is felt somewhere in this area of the body. So just this act of becoming aware, this act of turning towards our inner life, our inner experience, is an act of metta, of loving kindness. So is there a sense of contentment just to be sitting here, being aware of whatever we're aware of? Or do we have a sense of something lacking in this present moment? May manifest as a feeling of not wanting to be here, discomfort, unease, anxiety, restlessness, or confusion. See if we can contact that sense of what we could call lack. And just hold that feeling. Acknowledge that feeling. Acknowledge what doesn't want to be here, what's not content, what wants to move out, away from this moment, this experience. Acknowledging it and holding it in awareness. There's no judgment involved with any of our experience. It's just what is at this moment. If we feel just content to be here, just sitting in that contentment. Just allowing any sense of lack, any sense of movement away from this present moment awareness in the body and the heart. Just holding that. Letting that voice of lack be there. Giving that sense of lack the love that it needs. So call to mind a good friend. Conjuring up a good friend in our imagination, our memory. Noticing our response to the good friend. Also being aware of any barriers there might be or seem to be between us and the good friend. Anything that's holding us back from a closer relationship, a closer intimacy, closer friendship. And just holding in awareness, holding lightly and non-judgmentally. Whatever sense of barrier or fear, anything that's pushing away from that relationship, from that connection. And also anything that might be grasping after something, wanting to get something from the relationship, some conditional expectation, some past letdown or disappointment. Just holding lovingly, whatever responses are there. So we'll just do this for a few minutes before going to the neutral stage. Holding any responses of fear, of judgment, of hurt, expectation, etc. Holding them like the mother would hold the child who was upset, fearful, hurt. Moving into the third stage now. So quickly calling to mind a neutral person. Noticing their responses to the neutral person. Maybe there are fears, resistances, maybe a fear of liking or disliking, fear of difference, fear of potential disagreement. Holding all of these responses in loving awareness. They are simply our feelings. We hold them in this way. We don't have to react from them with either aversion or craving. Letting the voice of our fears and our resistances be heard and held. and that loving awareness. Moving into the fourth stage now, calling to mind so-called enemy, person we're having difficulty with. Noticing our responses. Notice any gripping, any tension, any contraction of the body or mind. And we call to mind, bring to mind the difficult person, any thoughts or trains of thoughts that arise in response to them. Allowing them to be there, to be acknowledged, to be held. Non-judgmentally, openly, lovingly, like the mother with the child. Unconditional love for our experience right now. And moving into the final stage. If we want to let metta expand out in the usual way, we can do that. Or we can just simply sit with the fruits of the practice. Just be still. So we'll have a break for 5 minutes. And then for those of us who